Alright, welcome back. Many people have asked me to do a video on this over the years. I just never got around to it. But today we're finally going to talk about magic squares. So, let's get into it. Alright, so what is a magic square? A magic square, simply put, is a square grid of numbers that when added up in any direction equal the same amount. This is nothing new. It dates back to ancient mathematicians. In of itself, there's nothing really special about the magic square other than it adds up to the same amount in any direction as a curiosity puzzle. But when we as magical practitioners talk about magic squares, we're referring to planetary magic squares. Each astrological planet has its own magic square, which is said to be infused with the planetary energy of the corresponding planet. And by using magic squares in our rituals and spell work, we are using yet another corresponding planetary influence. And that really covers the basics of magic squares. So now we need to know how to come up with each planetary magic square. And once again, this is really straightforward. First off, each astrological planet has a corresponding number. Those familiar with the Kabbalistic tree of life will already know these, as they are the same number as the corresponding Sephiroth on the tree of life for each planet. So Saturn would be 3, Jupiter would be 4, Mars would be 5, the Sun would be 6, Venus would be 7, Mercury would be 8, and the Moon would be 9, just as they are on the Kabbalistic tree of life. And now that we have each planetary number, we can now calculate each planet's magic square. So we're going to be starting with Saturn because it has the lowest number and will be the easiest to explain, but all the other planetary magic squares are going to be calculated in the same manner. So to get Saturn's planetary magic square, we start with the number 3. So our magic square is going to be 3 by 3. 3 spaces horizontally, 3 spaces vertically, for a total of 9 squares. Jupiter would be 4 by 4, Mars would be 5 by 5, etc. So since we have 9 squares, we want to total up the sum of those numbers. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 equals 45. Divided by Saturn's number, 3, equals 15. So each row or column of the magic square, when added up, needs to equal 15. Just like this. Okay? And it's the same for each magic square. So Jupiter would have a 4 by 4 square. And when you add up each number 1 through 16, you get 136 divided by 4. Jupiter's number, you get 34. So each row needs to add up to 34. Okay? It's real easy. And when you put your numbers in the square, you start with 1 and add each number, all the way up to 9 for Saturn, or 16 for Jupiter, 25 for Mars, etc. And that is how we get our planetary magic squares. So once we have them, how do we use them? Well, they can be used a couple of ways. First off, there's another planetary correspondence that we can use in our planetary magic. Unless you haven't been to my channel in quite some time, you know that I'm all about planetary magic. And I even have a program on it, the 7 planetary powers. Your planetary magic squares will fit nicely into everything that I teach in that program. But even if you don't get the program, you could still easily use magic squares in your practice by having them on your altar or with you during your spell work or ritual, so long as you're using the correct magic square for the job. You wouldn't want to use a Saturn magic square when performing work needing a Jupiter influence, for example. So the planetary influence needs to align with your intention. And that's what I teach in my program. And I've developed a keyword system which makes it very easy to know which planetary influence you need. Now, if you already know about your planetary correspondences, then you're good. And you probably already know about magic squares too. So the program is there for those who want to learn all about performing planetary magic without having to do a ton of research. And magic squares are just another planetary corresponding influence to add to that practice. As I said before, just having it with you during your rite or ritual will be beneficial so long as it corresponds with the planetary influence you're wanting to use. You can have it on your altar. You can even place your petition upon the magic square, which is on your altar, and leaving it there. Some claim that doing this will yield results in of itself because it's a symbolic representation of that planetary energy. And we know that magic is all about symbolism. So that's one way that we can use our magic squares. And it's my preferred way to use them, by just having them as another corresponding planetary influence. The other way that we can use planetary magic squares is by creating sigils with them. Once again, we would pick the magic square that would correspond with our intent. We wouldn't want to use Jupiter's square if we were needing Saturn. So we pick the correct magic square that we want to use, and we would simplify our intention down to a single word, and then trace that word into a sigil using the magic square. And we do this by assigning a numerical value to each letter of the alphabet. So once again, using Saturn as an example, we would go up to the number 9, letters A through I, and then repeat letters J through R, and then repeating one last time with letters S through Z. That is using the Western system. So, for example, if we want to be recognized for an achievement that falls within Capricorn's wheelhouse, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, so we're going to use the Saturn magic square, and we're going to use the word honors. By using the letter number system, it would turn out something like this. And we typically use a little circle for our starting point and a line for our end point. You can use 2 circles if you prefer, but I do like to denote the starting and end point. And that would be your sigil for honors using the magic square of Saturn. Now, as I mentioned previously, I prefer the first way of using magic squares, where we just utilize them as an extraplanetary correspondence. And this is because using them for sigils has always yielded mixed results for me. I get far better results creating my own sigils as I teach in the Manifesting Reality program. I just do. You can call me biased if you want, but the truth is I get far better results creating my own sigils rather than tracing a pattern, magic square or not. Now, that's not to say that the magic square sigils won't work. Many have, but they haven't always been consistent, at least in my experience with them. Your mileage may vary, and I've traced them all. I've done magic square sigils, I've done rose cross lamon sigils. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But I know that if I put the time and effort into creating my own sigil, then I'm going to get a result. And maybe that's just it. Maybe it's because I put the time and effort into creating my own, and the more you put in, the more you get out of it. Regardless, I know what works best for me, and that's what I teach in my programs. But I would also say give magic squares a shot and see how they work for you. Now, one last thing, I can't go over magic squares without also going over planetary seals. A planetary seal is the exact opposite of a planetary magic square. A seal is used to block or seal off a particular planetary energy. So the seal of Saturn would block off Saturn. Seal of Jupiter would block off Jupiter, etc. And a lot of people will get this mixed up. They'll think, oh, it's the seal of Saturn. I should be using this in my Saturn rituals. No, not unless you're trying to seal it off. So a magic square is more of a particular planetary influence, while a planetary seal blocks off a planetary influence. And one of the main ways you would use the planetary seal is by placing it on top of the magic square, sealing off that planetary influence. So say, for instance, you're having a particularly rough Mercury retrograde. You can draw out the magic square of Mercury and then draw Mercury's planetary seal on top of it, sealing it off. Just understand that when you use a planetary seal, you're not just sealing off the planetary aspects that you don't like. You're sealing off the entirety of that planetary energy. All right? And if you need to lift the seal for any reason, you just remove it from the magic square that it's on. Easy, easy stuff. Now, both magic squares and planetary seals can easily be found with a simple Google search. You won't have to do a lot of hunting for them. There are plenty of references. You can begin using them right away. And that will about do it on magic squares and planetary seals. I want to thank you for joining me and hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like and share it if you did. Apparently YouTube's algorithm doesn't even recommend it to people unless it gets enough likes. So please take a second to do so. It may help someone who needs this video find it. Follow me on social media, links to follow. This is Frater Xavier for Mind and Magic, and I'll see you again soon. Take care.